power, violence, scandal. Naomi Campbell has been hailed as the most beautiful woman on earth, yet whispered about as fashion's biggest nightmare. She hurled phones at assistants, dated Hollywood royalty, and made CEOs sweat through their silk ties. But she also shattered every glass ceiling set in her way. Her signature walk pounding out a new rhythm for what a supermodel could be. Here's an uncomfortable theory. Fashion doesn't like to discuss. Naomi wasn't born a monster. She was forged by an industry that demanded flawlessness and attitude, then punished her for wielding it with too much force. Fair judgment or fatal hypocrisy? You'll decide by the end. If you live for untold fashion stories, hit subscribe now so you never miss our trips behind the glamour. Today, we trace how a working-class girl from South London became the most feared woman in fashion, and why her latest charity scandal suggests some patterns never break. Naomi Elaine Campbell was born in Streatham, South London in 1970, but her real birth happened much later, when she decided the world would never ignore her again. Growing up without knowing her father, raised by a single mother who worked multiple jobs, young Naomi learned early that survival meant making yourself impossible to overlook. Being abandoned, that's what my core issues are: abandonment and rejection. Naomi revealed in a raw interview with Barbara Walters, and that puts me in a real vulnerable space. But vulnerability in Naomi Campbell's world quickly transformed into armor. When bullies targeted her at school, she didn't run home crying. I remember once a little boy hit me in my stomach, threw stones at me, and I have to say I fought back, she recalled. I hit back. That was my instinct. That instinct, to fight back when attacked, would define her entire career. For better and for worse, as you will soon find out. At 15, while window shopping in Covent Garden, Naomi was spotted by a modeling scout. But this wasn't a fairy tale discovery. This was 1985. And the fashion industry had very clear ideas about what beauty looked like. And it didn't look like Naomi Campbell. Black models don't sell magazines, editors told her agents. The international market isn't ready for a black face on the cover. Anyone else might have given up. But Naomi Campbell had been fighting her whole life, and she wasn't about to stop now when things were getting interesting. By the late 80s, the impossible was unfolding. The girl who'd once been told she'd never book a show was suddenly everywhere, fronting marquee campaigns, kicking down runways for Versace, Alaïa, and Chanel, and staring out from covers that had never before featured a black model. But smashing barriers in a racist industry demanded more than beauty. It required a presence so electric it short-circuited prejudice. Naomi had to be twice as good to get half the recognition, recalled photographer Mario Testino. She couldn't just be beautiful, she had to be undeniable. Undeniable came in the form of that walk. Long, fluid strides that glided yet hit the runway with the force of a drumbeat. Shoulders back, chin high, eyes fixed like a predator who already knows she's won. Linda Evangelista would later admit, "We all tried to walk like Naomi. Nobody could." The industry's front row didn't just watch her, they felt her. A regal, almost warrior-like charge that filled the room. Yet each triumphant step masked an exhausting war for equal pay and basic respect. Those battles forged something harder than diamond in Naomi's core. "I had to become someone they couldn't ignore," she said. "If they wouldn't love me, they would fear me." And fear her they did. The metamorphosis was gradual, then volcanic. The sweet teenager scouted in Covent Garden became a force who could make or break collections with a single nod. Editors who once dismissed her now angled for her approval. Designers who'd overlooked her begged for her to open their shows. But Naomi's power wasn't just professional, it was deeply personal. And nowhere was this more evident than in her legendary love life. Her most famous relationship was with Robert De Niro, the legendary actor 23 years her senior. Their romance in the late 1990s wasn't just tabloid fodder, it was a statement. Here was a black British model dating one of Hollywood's most respected actors, and she wasn't hiding in the shadows. Naomi and Bobby were like royalty, recalled a friend who witnessed their relationship. She brought glamour to his world, and he brought gravitas to hers. But De Niro was just the beginning. Naomi's romantic resume included Formula One billionaire Flavio Briatore, with whom she had an on-and-off relationship for years, Russian oligarch Vladimir Doronin, and a string of musicians, actors, and business moguls. In a 2021 interview with Vanity Fair, Campbell reflected on the cost of her high-profile partnerships. "The sacrifice is really finding that soulmate who will understand you," she said. "I'm strong, but I'm also sensitive. I know that in relationships I have to compromise." Her relationship with Briatore was particularly telling. The Italian businessman, known for his lavish lifestyle and Formula One connections, seemed to match Naomi's appetite for luxury and drama. Their tumultuous relationship played out in the pages of international magazines, with explosive breakups followed by passionate reconciliations. With Russian billionaire Vladimir Doronin, Naomi entered a different league entirely. Their 5-year relationship was marked by private jets, luxury yachts, and properties around the world. Doronin even built her a house shaped like the Eye of Horus in Russia. What's striking about all these relationships is how they reinforced Naomi's belief in her own power. She wasn't just a beautiful woman dating successful men. She was an equal partner who could command the attention of the world's elite. But these relationships also revealed a pattern: intense passion followed by dramatic endings. None of these powerful men could tame Naomi Campbell, and perhaps that was the point. Cue Paris, 1993. The shows are overbooked, the after-parties overflow, and Naomi Campbell is queen of every room. Then a newcomer appears, 17-year-old Tyra Banks. She's tall, fearless, and, crucially, another Black woman in a business that struggles to spotlight even one. Runway directors start whispering, fashion writers start comparing, and Naomi senses it. Her turf is shrinking. Tyra would later confess, tear-streaked on Oprah, that she spent those Paris nights crying her eyes out, because the idol she worshipped seemed determined to freeze her out. Whether Naomi actually hissed, "You'll never be me," backstage is debated. What isn't is the chill Tyra felt every time Campbell entered a casting room. And Tyra was only the loudest clash. Linda Evangelista, dueling for September covers, Christy Turlington, tug of war over brand exclusives. Any rising face, one glare from Naomi, and the temperature dropped 10 degrees. Why so territorial? Remember, Naomi had pried every inch of her success from an industry built to exclude her. Sharing that throne felt like surrender. But while she waged high-gloss wars in public, a quieter battle raged off stage. By the mid-1990s, cocaine was her constant companion. The late nights, the headline-making moods, fuel and fallout from the same white powder. In 1999, she finally checked into rehab in Arizona, later admitting the drug made her violent and irrational. Rehab didn't erase the feuds, but it changed the framing. Fans began asking, were the explosions pure ego, or a superstar self-medicating her way through relentless pressure? Naomi leaned into redemption, publicly acknowledging recovery, linking arms with charities, promising a softer edge. Yet the legend of her fury never quite faded. Because rivalry was also strategy. A reminder that in fashion, power often arrives wrapped in intimidation. But Naomi's feuds with other models were nothing compared to her treatment of the people who worked for her. Between 1998 and 2008, a pattern emerged that would define her public image for decades. A series of assault charges involving her domestic staff. The incidents were shockingly similar. An employee would do something that displeased Naomi, misplace an item, arrive late, fail to meet her exacting standards, and violence would follow. In 1998, she admitted to assaulting her assistant Georgina Galanis, grabbing her by the throat and shaking her until she fell to the sofa, shaking and in tears. In 2000, another assistant, Vanessa Frisbee, accused Naomi of assault, but the most infamous incident occurred in 2006, when Naomi threw a BlackBerry phone at her housekeeper, Anna Scolavino, over a missing pair of jeans. The image of Naomi Campbell in handcuffs being led away by police should have been a wake-up call. Instead, it became part of her legend. The most surreal moment came during her community service sentence. Ordered to work at a New York sanitation garage, Naomi showed up in a Dolce & Gabbana gown and designer heels, turning her punishment into a photo opportunity. She treated community service like a fashion shoot, observed one witness. It was either brilliant or completely tone-deaf, probably both. In 2008, she pleaded guilty to 4 counts of assaulting a police officer at Heathrow Airport after flying into a rage over a missing suitcase. Each incident followed the same pattern: explosive violence, legal consequences, public apologies, and then nothing changed. The cycle continued because the fashion industry continued to reward her behavior with contracts, covers, and cash. By the early 2000s and 10s, Naomi Campbell had conquered fashion, but reality TV gave her something fresh, the power to rule in real time with cameras rolling. In 2013, she signed on as a judge and executive producer of The Face. It was supposed to be her chance to mentor new talent, to pass on the hard-won wisdom of a supermodel icon. Instead, it became a showcase, a new arena, for her controlling intensity. No surprise then, when an exchange with contestant Devin Abdullah went viral. Devin, answering host Wendy Williams, said she didn't see herself as a black model, even though she is. Naomi, furious, shot back at her fellow judges. "What the does she mean? That's a disgrace! She's a black girl!" That moment wasn't care, it was confrontation. Naomi wasn't here to hold hands, she was here to challenge. Producers later said her critiques were driven by low tolerance for ambiguity, and even co-mentors often flinched during her deliveries. Some viewers saw strength, others called it bullying. But here's the truth, The Face wasn't about modeling, it was about influence. And Naomi was dishing it out with surgical precision. She didn't soften for the camera, she leaned in, hard, because in her world, real power wasn't about glamour, it was about control. Naomi Campbell wasn't always seen as a self-serving diva when it came to charity. For a long time, she was genuinely admired for her activism. In 1997, Nelson Mandela called her his honorary granddaughter. She campaigned alongside the United Nations to raise awareness for HIV. And in 2010, just weeks after the earthquake in Haiti, Naomi staged one of her proudest moments, a Fashion for Relief runway show in New York that raised over $1 million for disaster relief. Real money, real help, real impact. For years, this was part of her brand, the supermodel with a conscience. And then, she blew it all up. In September 2024, the UK Charity Commission released its final report on Fashion for Relief. The numbers weren't disappointing. They were humiliating. Between 2016 and 2022, the charity raised nearly £5 million. And how much went to people in need? £389,000. That's not even 9%. The rest? Gone, absorbed by luxury hotels, first-class flights, private security, spa treatments, and yes, even cigarettes. This isn't gossip, it's in the official report. At one Cannes fundraiser alone, Fashion for Relief burned through tens of thousands on Naomi's personal accommodations and travel. In 2019, the charity took in £1.7 million and gave just £5,500 to good causes. The woman who built her legacy on breaking barriers, who once stood beside Mandela and raised money for earthquake victims, was now using a charity to fund her lifestyle. The commission's conclusion? Mismanagement, misconduct. Naomi Campbell was banned from running any UK charity for 5 years, and Fashion for Relief was erased from the official register. And Naomi's response? A vague statement. She said the report was incomplete. She claimed she never undertook philanthropic work for personal gain. No apology, no accountability, just deflection. Again, this wasn't a feud with another model. This wasn't a tantrum on a set. This was taking money from people with nothing and spending it on herself. And when the mask finally slipped, even fashion couldn't cover for her. And it might be the one scandal Naomi Campbell never fully walks away from. If you followed Naomi Campbell long enough, the charity scandal didn't surprise you. It followed a pattern that's played out for decades. First, the explosion, an assistant assaulted, a model humiliated, a headline scandal. Then the reset, a vague apology, a rehab stint, a photo op at a UNICEF gala. And finally, the return, front row seats, new endorsement deals, glowing editorials, Washington rinse, repeat. And this isn't just about phones and tantrums. In 2010, Campbell was called to testify at The Hague after allegedly receiving blood diamonds from Liberian warlord Charles Taylor. The case involved war crimes, smuggled gems, and murky philanthropy, and Naomi, again, deflected. She admitted receiving dirty-looking stones, but denied knowing their origin. No charges were filed, but the optics? Disastrous. The difference this time? The stakes were higher, and the damage harder to ignore. Even after Fashion for Relief collapsed in disgrace, Naomi didn't vanish. She walked Paris Fashion Week. She posted cryptic affirmations on Instagram. She reappeared in Vogue spreads and luxury campaigns, as if nothing had happened. Some in the industry even rallied behind her. Designers welcomed her back. Journalists downplayed the scandal. As The Guardian once noted, Campbell's ability to reassert herself after controversy has long been part of her brand, a kind of defiant reinvention that fashion never seems willing to punish. Because in this world, redemption is always in season, especially when you're profitable. As the fashion industry began to reckon with its history of toxicity and abuse, Naomi Campbell's behavior came under new scrutiny. What had once been dismissed as diva behavior or industry toughness was now recognized as workplace harassment and emotional abuse. The Me Too movement and increased awareness of mental health issues cast her actions in a harsh, new light. Young models who had been subjected to her treatment began speaking out about the lasting damage it had caused. The industry began to distance itself from Naomi and what she represented. Agencies implemented new policies to protect models from harassment. Reality shows hired psychologists to support contestants. The culture that had enabled her behavior was slowly changing. Even as recently as September 2024, Naomi's inability to change was on full display. At a Harlem fashion event, Anna Wintour, considered by many the most powerful woman in fashion, publicly humiliated her in front of hundreds of people. "I am a very punctual person, and I have the honor of presenting tonight to someone who is often late," Wintour announced from the stage, her voice dripping with disdain. The message was clear. Even Anna Wintour, who had worked with Naomi for decades, was done with her unprofessional behavior. Wintour left immediately after her speech, refusing to present the award to Naomi personally. When Naomi finally took the stage, arriving at 7:26 p.m. for a 7:27 p.m. slot. Technically on time, but after Wintour had already begun speaking, her response was telling. "Yes, Naomi's always late," she began defensively, "but I believe in my higher power. It wasn't my choice to have the other lady. I'd much rather have this," she said, motioning toward the replacement presenter. Even in what should have been a moment of triumph, receiving a Fashion Icon Award, Naomi couldn't resist creating drama and burning bridges. The woman who once commanded respect through fear now seemed desperate and petty. Was Naomi Campbell a casualty of a system that thrives on toxicity, or a self-made tyrant who happened to be breathtakingly beautiful? The Fashion for Relief scandal, where only a fraction of the millions raised ever reached beneficiaries, delivers the clearest verdict yet. Campbell's rise was forged in an era of open racism and sexism. Every booking, dollar, and ounce of respect was a battle. Somewhere along that climb, the outsider morphed into the gatekeeper. The woman who broke rules began breaking people, and the champion of the vulnerable was accused of exploiting them. But don't worry for Naomi. Despite the fallout, her personal fortune still sits at around $80 million. Proof that the business of being Naomi Campbell remains highly profitable. And she's not exactly sidelined. In 2024, she walked for Balmain, launched a capsule collaboration with Hugo Boss, and appeared in major campaigns. The scandals tarnished her, but they never erased her. And lucrative or not, her influence on fashion is undiminished. Models such as Adut Akek, who calls Campbell her mama, and Jordan Dunn, who credits Naomi's advice for shaping her career, continue to cite her as mentor and benchmark. In the end, Campbell is less a morality tale than a mirror. She reflects an industry that too often prizes image over empathy and success over kindness. Whether the monster was created or self-made, her shadow and her seismic impact still dominate the runway. So what's your verdict? Was Naomi Campbell broken by a toxic industry, or was she always ready to exploit others for personal gain? Does the charity scandal change your view of her legacy? Tell us below, and hit subscribe for more untold fashion stories. Your support makes all the difference. And continue your exploration of this fascinating world with this popular video from our catalog.